Good morning. I am Chris Steyerwalt, and these are your buzz cuts from Fox News First. Off the top, Obamacare enforcers under fire. Everybody loves the IRS. Oh, wait, hold on. Republicans are increasingly turning their focus to the Internal Revenue Service, which happens to be the agency tasked with enforcing Obamacare, penalizing those individuals who do not comply with the president's new health, as he calls it, health insurance reform. That includes questions about how the investigation or lack thereof into political targeting by the agency is going. It goes to dysfunction inside the agency. Lots of interesting stuff there. Number two, Reid bolts on Obama's trade push. So President Obama likes free trade, which not all Democrats really agree on. Harry Reid, who is a union man big time, hailing from Nevada, where unions helped reelect him and have funded all of his campaigns, says no. And he is going to drop the president's request for a free trade pact. Now, that will actually, in a weird way, be helpful to the president because it won't cause a vote. If Reid can just keep it off the floor and block it, then it won't cause a contentious vote. But this comes as union leaders complain about the carve-out that they got from Obamacare. They say it's not enough. Paul taunts Christie on bridge woes. Rand Paul he's not snarky. I don't know what the term for it is, but he's putting the pepper on it lately. He was on with Sean Hannity last night, and Hannity was trying to explore the tensions between Rand Paul and Chris Christie, and Paul said, "Oh, no, we're one big happy family now. It's all under the bridge." Yikes. Number four, Planet Hillary and the Asteroids. That's not a new band. That is Hillary Clinton compared to the rest of the Democratic field. Washington Post poll and one from WMUR in New Hampshire show her lapping the Democratic field by 6 times, a 6-fold prohibitive favorite in the Democratic process. Last but definitely not least, got the flu? Forget the coup. Ukraine President Viktor Yanukovych isn't feeling very well. You might think that the days of civic unrest in the streets of Kiev are the problem, as protesters demand the ouster of the pro-Putin Yanukovych. But that's not it at all. AP reports that the embattled leader has gone on sick leave. A statement on the presidential website said Yanukovych has an acute respiratory illness and a high fever. There was no indication of how long he might be on leave or when he might be able to return to work. Perhaps he ought to check into the Andropov Clinic, because you know what happens to the people who go in there. But those are your buzz cuts. You'd have them all already if you were a subscriber to Fox News First. It's great. It's free. Just give us your email address. That's all the information we need from you, and we will give you Fox News First each and every day. But we're going to do it all right now because it's Power Play.
Did you know that the lawyer in charge of this investigation was a major Obama donor?
Well, first off, the characterization of this lawyer as the lead lawyer on the case, I think, is not correct.
General Holder, with all respect, you did not answer the question I asked, which is, did you know that this lawyer was a major Obama donor?
No, I don't know anything about the political activities of any of the people who are involved in this investigation.
That was an exchange between Ted Cruz, a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Eric Holder, who was up there to talk about the NSA and really didn't want to talk about the IRS. But guess what? The Republicans really wanted to talk about the IRS. This is Power Play. Welcome back. Steve Hayes, I don't know whether Steve Hayes wants to talk about the IRS. He is a senior writer for the Weekly Standard. He is a Fox News contributor, and he has graciously joined us. So really, if you want to change topics now, that's fine.
I'll talk about whatever you tell me to talk about.
Is that how you roll?
It's your show.
Oh, man. Fake television is still kind of television.
Wait, you can't say fake
No,
television.
we're in now.
I said it, and you scolded me for saying it.
But that was when we were still... Look, it's actually what it really is. I'm a fake host. It's real television with a fake host. Okay. And I'm just afraid that one day when as the medium expands, they'll be like, hey, Hillbilly, come on, man. You got to get out of there. We need an actual person. But here's the thing. It has always been a little implausible seeming that the most hated of the federal agencies, the Internal Revenue Service, and also one that a new report that's just out says confirms what we know, which is it doesn't work. It's not popular, and it doesn't work. It doesn't do its unpopular work very effectively. Right. Is an unlikely candidate to be America's healthcare police. Right. Are the Republicans just making noise? Is there real fire here, or is it just smoke?
No, I think there's fire here. I mean, look, there are all sorts of problems. I mean, problems at the IRS is certainly nothing new. You can go back and look historically at the sort of thug tactics that the IRS has used over the years. And the concerns that people have, I think, are very real concerns. Layer on top of that, these questions with the IRS targeting of conservative groups, the inability of Eric Holder to answer very many of the questions.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, you know, he used the dodge that we often hear from politicians. This is an ongoing investigation. I can't give you anything. But most of the questions that were posed to him were posed with that in mind, and they tried to get him to answer questions that he could answer. But, you know, he was asked about the politics of this Barbara Bosserman and the fact that she's a donor and is helping to lead the investigation. And he said, you know, I'm not aware of any of the politics or the political activities of anybody
He said he trusted the what do you call them? The career civil servants who are engaging in this work, and I don't know. And Cruz and others pointed out, and if you want to know how it's going, Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz are all synced up on this. Right. So this is the kind of thing that Republicans don't have a problem talking about. It is not divisive like immigration or something else. And Cornyn was talking about, they're all talking about it, that it's been nearly 9 months. It's been more than 8 months since the president, you remember, came out and said, no one is more angry about this than I am. But really, at the IRS, there has not been the kind of undertaking that would cause Americans on the 31st of March, when the IRS starts enforcing Obamacare, to say, I have a lot more confidence in this agency.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, this is one problem, I think, with the administration that we've seen more broadly. There is no such thing as accountability. I mean, at the very least, we should have some accounting of what happened, how this happened. But in fact, what we're seeing instead is the administration pushing hard behind the scenes to codify exactly the practices that got the IRS in trouble in the first place. Try to formalize them, in effect. We said, and that's a huge problem. It should be a big fight.
As we said in Fox News First today, legalize it. That was
the Peter Tosh reference was not lost on me.
Look at that. Legalize. Some call it camp weed. Some call it ganja. So the thing about the Republicans right now is there is this immigration thing. The House Republicans are having their retreat. Are they going to do immigration? Drudge Report has a picture of John Boehner in a sombrero up today. It's very like it's whatever. But Hugh Hewitt was one. I heard him, and there are others on the right that are basically saying everybody needs to remember to put first things first before you talk about anything else. Just do Obamacare. Just stay on Obamacare, and the IRS gives them an opportunity to do that sort of through a side door.
Yeah, but they don't need the IRS and a side door to stay on Obamacare. Right. They should be talking about Obamacare all the time, under every circumstance, raising it at every moment, the kinds of things that Republicans were doing on the day of the State of the Union, pointing out the people who've had these problems, highlighting their issues, talking about the further complications with Obamacare. I mean, this new protest from unions today on Obamacare is, I think, potentially real trouble for the administration. They need their liberal base to stay with them more than anything.
And that's what was interesting was that yesterday I watched I think it was Andrea Mitchell's television show on MSNBC. Mm-hmm. I did not have control of the clicker. Not that I'm disparaging in any way. No. But I watched the show and they were talking about the President's State of the Union like it would melt the hearts of Americans. It was this amazing thing. And they were all talking about it. And I kept thinking, tomorrow, though, they will wake up and still go, Obamacare, dagnabbit. Like, it's still there. And I think this year Democrats are getting these brief periods of remission from Obamacare where they're like, well, we'll talk about income inequality, or we'll talk about something else, or people still like the president, and then the next day they come back. And it's sort of like for Republicans, when they lost the Senate, it was the Iraq War then. Right. Every day you wake up and it's still there.
Well, I think that's right. And look, I mean, it's showing up in all of its various forms. You've got these court cases that George Will's column engaged today, which are fantastic. Look, it's a fantastic column. It's a big deal. I mean, news reporters who are covering this straight. Yes. George is a huge, huge plus for Fox generally. Look, he's so, I mean, you listen to him sometimes, you say,
when it's like
That's how it is.
When you're talking about and this now I will engage in some ass kissing. I apologize right now.
You can say that
Some
because it's the
buttocks
internet.
kissing, I guess. But I will say, anytime it's like the Krauthammer, the Will, the Hayes, like basically you're like, it's this the 27 Yankees of talking about politics. It's kind of exciting.
I mean, for me, as somebody who grew up,
I know.
reading
That's what I
Charles,
feel like.
reading George,
Exactly.
it's you have to stop and say, okay, I'm going to. I think he's wrong about
I
this.
think he's wrong
I'm going
about
to
that.
strongly disagree with
we're in
this
the green room.
guy I've looked at all of my life.
Thank you for the coffee, Mr. Will. And it's like I do get these moments. Okay, so Steve Hayes and I just fanboyed. We just fanboyed.
It's all right. We're permitted.
It's cool. All right. Well, Steve Hayes, you're permitted here anytime. You're a welcome guest. We're grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Internet, you know who else is a welcome guest, and you know who else you will be grateful to see? Judge Andrew Napolitano, the Fox News Channel senior judicial analyst. He has some questions for you, and if you know what's good for you, you'll stick around to answer them.
Republicans have watched the president exercising what he calls necessary executive enforcement discretion, simply rewriting portions of the law. Is there a feeling now that there's no point in agreeing to an immigration regime because he might suspend crucial provisions of it?
You know, it's an interesting question, George.
And that was an interesting question, and it was posed by George Will, a Fox News contributor par excellence, talking to Senator Mike Lee last night on the All-Star panel on Special Report. And this is Power Play. Welcome back. So what's the point of having laws or passing laws if they don't get enforced? That's, I think, an okay question. A Steyerwaltian take on Will's 30,000-foot riff. Someone who can test these assumptions, rooted in law, rooted in the Constitution, the law of man and the law of nature. Judge Andrew Napolitano, he is a Fox News Channel senior judicial analyst and the author of a great column today at Fox News Opinion, where you do this from time to time, Judge. You test us and you test our thinking, and you basically run a series of questions at us. And a lot of the question I want to ask you about Edward Snowden. I want to ask you about the Director of National Intelligence's testimony, because you put a lot in there. But one of the fundamental questions you ask, though, is what if this isn't a country of laws?
Yes.
What if the laws are neglected? What if the real state of the union today is that the laws that we pass don't matter?
Well, to George Will's point, with which I concur, to Senator Ted Cruz's point, with which I concur, and Mike Lee, sitting right here with Brett on Special Report last night, President Obama, right before Christmas, when Obamacare the rollout was a failure, and we all learned that 6.2 million of us lost insurance policy, said to the insurance carrier, keep the old substandard policies in place. Well, that was illegal.
Right.
Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz offered legislation to make it legal, and the president threatened to veto that legislation.
How dare you legalize what I did?
Right. So that tells you that he's more interested in being some sort of a basement tyrant by telling people, go ahead and break the law and I won't come after you, than he is in having the law corrected to adapt to the needs of the people.
But that's right. But if a leader is able, what greater power could there be for a leader than to be allowed to grant dispensations
and
from the law?
That's George Will's point, and that turns him from a leader into a tyrant. Look, the executive has what's called prosecutorial discretion,
right,
because he has limited resources. He can't prosecute everybody for every crime for which they're guilty. We expect him to use those resources consistent with the Constitution.
Right.
But if he says, I won't deport you if you do A, B, C, and D, and he makes up the A, B, C, and D, and it defies what Congress has written into the statute, then we really have a very serious problem, which moves into the I word category, impeachment. I don't think he's going to be impeached. There's not a public appetite for it. No. He still enjoys a personal popularity.
Yeah.
But his behavior is worthy of consideration for impeachment when he single-handedly upsets the balance of powers, the separation of powers, and frustrates the will of the Congress. Now, is Congress complicit here? Of course. They do nothing. Nothing!
The framers could have never, and you've written on this, and we've talked about this, but the framers it was beyond the imaginings of the framers of the Constitution that the legislative branch of government would seek to diminish its own power.
Right.
Because they assumed that people being people would seek to accrete to themselves power, that they would seek to gather power around themselves. And that was in fact true until about World War II, maybe a little earlier. But that Congress now, they don't want to declare war. They don't want to do taxes. They don't want to regulate. They farm that all out to the executive branch.
My next book, which is written but won't be out until either June or September, has the working title Suicide Pact, the Constitution and the Radical Expansion of Executive Power after 9/11. And it all happened. It's a bizarre phenomenon because most people in power want more. Members of Congress in power give it away to the presidency and then complain when he uses it in ways that they don't like.
Well, and what I find it, and I think 9/11 is, I can't wait to see this book. I think 9/11 was definitely a signal moment in that
absolutely.
when there was a national security thing. But I would say that starting farther back, I think there's there's an economic component in this that has to do with in the years of plenty or the years of borrowing. Congress basically became a vehicle. People were elected to Congress and re-elected to Congress and essentially adjudged on the basis of how much free stuff they could bring back to their states and their districts. Your ability to bring home the bacon became a paramount skill as it related to getting elected and reelected. And you have high incumbency rates. Therefore, those people become disinclined.
Correct.
To do things that are unpopular, controversial, or in any way create friction against the power structure.
And they know when they bring home enough of the bacon, they'll always get reelected because when the public finds out it's a game of bacon, they will always send to Congress those who promise to and succeed in bringing home the most.
Man, I would love to play something called a game of bacon. That sounds delicious. I am into that. Now,
I'll tell you another phrase I came across the other day, which I loved. Defender of the Constitution. The proposal to have a lawyer argue before the FISA court opposing NSA applications. It's a great title. I would love that title, Defender of the Constitution. But the proposal is meaningless because lawyers can only have real clients. You can't turn an argument in a courtroom into a moot court argument.
What's the name when a child is involved in a legal proceeding? The court will appoint a lawyer,
a guardian ad litem.
Guardian ad litem. So it would be a guardian ad litem for the Constitution.
Yes. Doesn't work under the Constitution.
This is you. This is the judge.
I'll keep my day job.
All right. Okay. Now, last thing before we let you go, because we burned up all of our time with interesting discussion on Mr. Snowden, on the Director of National Intelligence. Do you think that the more hawkish tone vis-a-vis Al-Qaeda that we heard from the Director of National Intelligence yesterday, is in any way a reflection of trying to preserve if it's an election year, come along with me in my weird trip. It's an election year, you want Al-Qaeda to be on the run because you want to get reelected because you say you're strong on national security. Snowden leaks, you're found out to be snooping on everybody and checking their text messages and all that stuff. Now you need an enhanced threat in order to validate why you need all the snooping. Am I crazy?
No. You're not crazy. I agree with that, and I would add to it. General Clapper is really, really, really on thin ice. This is a public perjurer that even the man in the street can understand the perjury. He really needs to shore up his own credibility and a reason for keeping him in office. But when he calls Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras and even our own Catherine Herridge accomplices in Snowden's illicit behavior, hasn't he read the Pentagon Papers case? Doesn't he know that once the documents he didn't mention them by name because he just said accomplices. Right. Doesn't he know that once the information is in the hands of the press, not only are they authorized to release it, but it's a good thing to release it because it serves the First Amendment needs of the people? He's trying to shore up his own credibility. Look, General Alexander's leaving in 2 months. I don't know how much longer Clapper's going to stay around. The case against Clapper is stronger than the case against Alexander.
Well, you know, in Washington, Judge, you got to keep people in office long enough for them to take the blame for enough stuff.
There you go.
Before you put them on the ice floe and send them out into the North Atlantic. Judge, we hope you will come back to our ice floe sometime. Are you on the panel tonight?
I am.
He'll be back in this very space. You'll see him back having
right in this chair,
having serious grown-up conversation instead of talking
just like
to me.
we had now. Mr. Professor Starwalt.
Medium. Judge, we're so grateful that you did this. We really appreciate you
Thanks for
stopping by
having me,
whenever
Chris.
you do. And you, Internet, we're still glad that you're here. So glad, in fact, that we have a panel arranged to talk to you, just you, about immigration, which I know you want to talk about because it makes you mad and you yell about it in here. So we will talk about immigration, the Republican Party. We will talk about labor unions and their pushback on the Democrats. Divided. Which party is going to do which coming up? We'll talk about it when we come back, so stick around. And that is what it sounds like when union members are not happy. And they are not happy, in fact, with the carve-out that was granted to unions in their so-called Cadillac. I think that's pejorative, but what they call them Cadillac plans. They're good insurance plans. Special tax under Obamacare. They say the exemption is nothing, and this comes as labor unions are also upset with the president for his pursuit of free trade. So what about that? Why don't we talk to some people a person you know and a person you don't know. Meet, like, and be introduced to Anthony Woods. He is an Army veteran. We thank you for your service. He is a former White House fellow. What does that mean?
1-year program. Colin Powell's a former White House fellow, for example. Gets to work in the administration, learn about leadership.
Are you a Democrat?
I most certainly am.
All right, okay.
He's a cool guy, though.
He's a Californian. Okay. Ford O'Connell is not from California. Neither is he a Democrat. He is a former advisor to John McCain's presidential campaign. He is a chairman of the Civic Forum PAC. He is a Republican. He is a strategist. He wears a red tie, so you know those things are true. Hi, guys.
Well, Chris, go ahead. Let me hear it.
What?
Be with you.
I'm not. Okay, so here's the thing, and I want to start with you, Anthony. For the president, dealing with trade has been an interesting issue. He wants trade because exports are a big part of how he gets it going. That's the idea. Is we increase exports. He's used the export